The following day, Carolyn rang me and said she was going to head back out there, and this was about 7 o'clock. And at about 7:15, we started fielding phone calls from the media.
This is one of the most horrendous cases of animal cruelty, and the more we learn about it, the more distressing the details are.
The RSPCA was notified nearly 2 weeks ago about the case, but says it didn't realise how bad the situation was.
It was a Monday morning. I think a few people within our team driving to work had heard some news reports on, some of the local Melbourne radio stations that a situation was unfolding at Bulla, which is obviously, almost metropolitan, basically, that involved quite a serious case of animal cruelty or potential animal cruelty involving horses. Now, when those news reports started to filter in, we didn't have a lot of information. We didn't know, that the news reports basically said horses. We didn't know if they were thoroughbreds. They could have been Shetland ponies for all we knew. Then, as the morning went on, we started to hear some reports that these were racehorses.
Carolyn went back out to the property and found that the road was blocked with media vehicles. There were helicopters overhead. By 8 o'clock, I'd given a couple of interviews about what had happened.
There was some communication. We had a great working relationship at the time with the RSPCA in Victoria, and I think some calls were made to them to ascertain their level of involvement and if they could provide us any more information. They said that the horses were thoroughbreds. We were able to cross-check our licensing team, or Racing Victoria's licensing team, were able to cross-check the location of the property at which these horses were found with our database of participants, and it was determined that this was actually the premises of a person that held a trainer's licence, an active trainer's licence. They hadn't had a horse start in a race for, I think it might have been 3 or 4 years, but they still did hold a restricted trainer's licence.
We could see in his barn on the hill horses' heads out the window. So it wasn't just the horses in the paddocks, there was 2 horses inside that we could see also. When we opened the shed door, there was plenty of feed inside the barn, but the horses couldn't access it.
I actually contacted Racing Victoria to tell them about the situation that was unfolding, that we had multiple dead horses that were thoroughbreds and multiple horses on this property that were emaciated and in dire need of emergency care.
At that point, there was some concern that, well, hang on, this is a situation that Racing Victoria needs to be involved in and we need to offer our assistance. Bernard Saundry was the CEO at the time, and at that point, he basically instructed me as the equine welfare officer and our veterinary team and also our comms team to basically do whatever we needed to do to offer our assistance to the RSPCA. Victoria Police were involved at the time, so to them, and just to see what we could do.
Probably about 10 o'clock by this stage, and I thought, well, RSPCA aren't doing anything, and there was feed, so I ran out some bags of chaff for them. I then went back 2 hours later just to check that everything was still, no one had turned up still. And the RSPCA turned up and wasn't very nice to me and wanted to know what I'd done and how dare I feed these animals and what would I know about anything. And I went, well, love, you had 24 hours and since I'd seen them and no one had turned up. So I was doing what I thought was right, which was to feed the horses and make sure they had water.
In the initial part, it was to, provide veterinary care. I know a couple of the Racing Victoria vets headed up to, join the many vets that the RSPCA had engaged to see what they could do. If that was to render veterinary care to horses on the property, it was also to take a scanner up there and scan these horses for microchips.
The most amazing thing about the racing community in this story is that as soon as they realised there was a problem, they basically banded together and were like, we need to help. So we had 3 trucks there, we had drivers, we had people there basically to take these horses anywhere that they needed to go.
So Emma gave us a call and said, look, is there any chance we could use your truck? And I said, in a heartbeat. So I sent the truck and the driver, rang Steve Adams from Freedman's. I knew their truck was sitting at the thing, not doing much. And Brent Stanley was with me at the time as well. So the 3 of us sent our trucks out there and, yeah, we didn't do much. It's just, I think anybody in the industry would have done that.
I received a phone call from Troy Corsons just asking if I could jump in our truck and head out to Bulla. He gave me the address where the horses were. I had no idea what I was going to see. I just jumped in the truck and went. When I arrived, the other 2 trucks were already there. Didn't see any like actual carcasses down the back, which was good not to see, but obviously saw all those malnourished horses and lots of people around trying to get them on trucks, etc. One thing that did surprise me, I did see feed there and I assumed that was the RSPCA's feed that they brought out, but it was actually a feed that the owner had there, and he obviously just didn't want to feed them for whatever reason.
There were horses that had been dead for maybe a month, maybe 2 months. The ones that are living were all pretty much in that same horrendous condition, but still standing. And this doesn't happen overnight. Like, these horses had been starved for weeks, maybe months, depending on what grass they could salvage.
We were working closely with the RSPCA. We were probably on the phone to them hourly just to see if there were any updates, if there was anything that we could do. At a point in time, they thought that we may be able to engage, you know, the network of acknowledged retrainers that we have, which at the time there was probably 40 or 50 people around the state that Racing Victoria used to help retrain horses that had come out of racing and place them into, you know, new equestrian homes or pony club homes or adult riders' homes. And there was a thought that maybe we could use some of these guys to initially house the horses and help, you know, manage that rehabilitation process. As it turned out, you know, the RSPCA thought that the best course of action would be to, you know, ensure that the horses were moved to one location and their rehabilitation was managed as a whole, and we didn't have any retrainers that could do that. So that's when Horse Shepherd Equine Sanctuary came into the mix. Anne Young and Belinda Goyarts, who ran that, I think were, you know, engaged to help, and pretty quickly the decision was made that, well, these guys can house, you know, 23 horses, so we're going to send them up to their property and they were, you know, initially help with the rehabilitation process.
I got a phone call from Belinda to say that RSPCA were looking at this seizure and would we consider taking them. And we were in a really fortunate position because, one, we had the team. So we had Golden Plains Vet Clinic and Anne Jacobson at Rosehill, so they had done the Warwick horses. And so you've got to have the facilities, the experience and the people to be able to handle them. So we had the team. We had Chris Giles to handle them, as I said, the vet clinic, and we had the property.
Basically, I drove in and had to get straight out because there were other trucks coming in. And as soon as the horses got off the truck I took, they were getting their temperatures taken, they were getting drips put straight into them, so getting the fluid straight into them, straight away they were taken care of.
The triage process is a clinical exam. We look at the horses. We also would assess blood work and look at liver function, kidney function, how alert the horse is, whether they're willing to eat. Some of these horses actually just get to the point where they are giving up because they've been like in this situation for such a long period of time. We might have horses that don't have any teeth because they've been grinding rocks and ground because they're just trying to eat something, and those horses potentially can't eat very well anymore.
It seemed like it took forever, but I was just hoping when I got to the other end that they were all okay still. Like, you know, the stress of the truck drive without them probably, you know, having very little time on trucks. I wasn't sure what they'd be like on the other side, and I think I had a foal on there with her mother as well, so, you know, that was quite, you know, just hoping they'd be okay.
With the Bulla horses, we'd also moved to this property and we still had the other property which was vacant, which enabled us to move them somewhere that if they tried to find them, chances are they wouldn't be able to. And we were able to put a team in the house for, I think, like a month it was, because those horses were extreme colic risks and, you know, had to be checked so frequently. So that worked really, really well.
We then have the added difficulty of actually trying to rehabilitate these horses, just feeding them, because we can't just throw feed at them, because we can also then stuff up their metabolism and cause liver disease, kidney disease and all other kind of diseases where they actually die from kindness almost, that we try and feed them too fast, and they need to have really specialist care to be able to rehabilitate them back to a normal healthy horse.
Beautiful trucks pulling up, and then out came these horses. I mean, I don't think we'd seen anything like it before. And some of them didn't even have tails because they'd been eating each other's tails. And there were 2 mares with foals, and I don't know how those mares raised those foals in those conditions. I mean, I don't know. I don't know why 20-odd died or however many died, and these 20-odd managed to come in these beautiful big trucks and off they came. We got the blood tests done, we got, the vets were there, and kudos to Racing Victoria because they made sure that they got access to everything that they needed from a vet perspective. And then we started that slow process of feeding them. And it's so hard because they're hungry, right? First we started with just hay, and then slowly we built it up to mixed feeds. Kilato were excellent. They gave us a whole lot of products. They arrived that night. Horseland and Ringwood provided them with rugs, so we got every horse rug because the ability to stay warm. The foals I knew would be fine. I didn't realise we were going to have the problems ongoing that we did, particularly with Quinn, because we weaned them straight away, even though they were only, it was hard to tell, about 4 or 5 months old, but you know, to give those mares a chance, we weaned them. Horses are so stoic, and it's one of the problems, right, is they can carry so much pain and people don't pick up on it till it's too late. So horses never surprise me, but I wouldn't have been surprised if we'd have lost more, I'd have to say.